as a country, have phased out the need for new petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2030. But it doesn't suggest that we would be diesel and petrol free by then. But we can expect more varied, cleaner and greener vehicles, which obviously is good for the environment, the climate and the consumers. There is a 30 million that's been allocated for the EV Infrastructure Fund, which is on the Transport Scotland website. They have also had an ambition to have 7,300 public charging points. One of the big things, obviously, is the costs and the restrictions. And I think, money, not just in the public purse, but obviously the more you spend, Richard, the less that you can, take away as a profit or a shareholder or invest back into the business. So costs and restrictions. Do you lease in your own fleet? Do you buy your own fleet? How does that stack up for costs? And then once you've got that, what comes first? The infrastructure or the fleet? And how, is that a challenge for people?
Yeah, I think you have to always think in infrastructure first because, similar to you, I've been doing this for about 10 years, and so it amazes me that people will get in 100 electric vehicles and then realise they've got nowhere to charge them. So you've got to get your charging right first, and then you know how feasible it's going to be.
Home, depot charging, and then public charging. It should be a mix of three. Some might kind of dedicate mainly chargers to home, but you've got to kind of look at individual operations and staff. Is that right? And I think in terms of using the public infrastructure, it's quite controversial, isn't it? Because if you've got especially your fleet, if your emergency services are going green and using public infrastructure, how can you kind of ensure that it's going to be, one, working, and two, not actually getting used up by someone else? So I've been chatting to Stagecoach, and they've been doing kind of building high power DC hubs, and then they were kind of going out to they went out to like police forces in the northeast and offering that up as a bit of a partnership collaboration, not just kind of open it up to everybody in public. It's like a secure kind of place. Nobody can actually see people charging, so that's their kind of view, and I think probably that should happen a little bit more.
That's in place 2 miles from here. You can public charge at the first bus depot.
And is that open to public?
In the last 6 months or so, they've opened it up.
Yeah.
So they've got obviously the massive infrastructure for the buses. And now they've opened a part of it. You can rapid charge there with your car.
And at a good rate as well, isn't it?
Probably the best example in Scotland, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've obviously got depots in Glasgow, Caledonian Road. They've got 80 ultra rapid chargers in Caledonian Road. They've got 36 in Aberdeen and King Street, which again we use as well. In fact, in Aberdeen, I've got 3 offices in and around Aberdeen, and I've only got charging in one of our own offices because we're reliant on First Bus in Aberdeen, and we've been able to increase the vehicle numbers in Aberdeen purely because of the relationship we've had with First Bus to the last.
But if you've got a known mileage, give or take, each day, you've no excuse for not being electric. So the bus companies know exactly what the 48 is going to do.
Yep.
It's the same. That's why all the big parcel carriers, your DPDs, UPS, etc., they're miles down the line with electric because they know exactly what they're going to do today. They've got a collection route, a delivery route, a collection route, and it'll be 100 miles, give or take 5 miles, depending on who's on that day. So if you know what you're doing, you're clear. It's just when you don't know what you're doing. So we're primarily a same-day carrier. So my guys could be doing NHS work around Glasgow most of the day, and then the blood transfusion want to send us to Inverness at 6 o'clock at night, and we don't have the charge left in the vehicle to do it.
Right, okay.
And that's where your problems are.
And particularly with the vans, as the architecture of the vehicles change and you actually are able to take ultra rapid charging at a much quicker rate than you can currently. Most of the vans currently are sort of 50 kilowatt maximum rate, although they're starting to go up to 120, 150. That makes a massive difference as well. And that's when we started to switch across to operational marked vehicle. That was the sort of changing point. As you can charge the vehicles quicker, the range hasn't really improved much, but being able to charge them in 25 minutes as against 55 minutes has made a huge difference,
Would I be right in saying that the additional electric charges across the whole of the grid are part of that increase in the cost?
The reason I think that some of the prices are so high, and potentially on the clock can kind of offer the lower price. So these private companies like an Instavolt are coming in, BP Pulse, they're coming in, securing kind of the land for like a 10-year lease. They're paying for all of that infrastructure, they're paying for that DC, they're paying for the connection. Those new DNO costs are hundreds of thousands of pounds, and that is why we have to cover, that is why the costs are so high. Some electrical contractors will just put kind of like off-the-shelf solutions in and not think about that ongoing maintenance and ongoing support that fleets really need. It used to be just like tick a box, put a charge point in the ground, but it's not about that anymore. It's about obviously energy, where it's coming from, how we're managing that, and then also kind of the support and all of that data that charge point's giving you going forward. And it's not just going to be redundant after 5 years. It can be swapped out. It's future proof. The install's future proof.
One issue as well is the private networks that are operating within the public sector. It's trying to get mapping of the locations of where those charge points are, because it's great, you've got ZapMap, you've got all these different apps that you can use for public charge points, but trying to get the private ones and which ones you can actually access as well. If somebody was doing a map for that, I tell you, they'd bite their hand off for it.
We obviously install for customers. They get obviously a choice to whether they have a private or public charger, and if it's like published on the map. Also with the kind of new regulations that's come in terms of anything over 8 kilowatt has to have like payment terminals. If it's public, people are kind of like, no, this is private, because the payment terminals are costing just the same as the charge point. So people are kind of protecting what they're putting in, protecting their assets. But it's
certainly in Scotland,
similar for you.
we share charger network with Scottish Fire and Rescue, Scottish Ambulance, and in some cases NHS as well. I've got some NHS chargers on some of our site. I can get access with, again, that single RFID card into all Scottish Ambulance chargers and also Scottish Fire and Rescue. They can replicate and use our chargers, but unfortunately we have got our cards whitelisted. They need to borrow a card at that particular office or depot to charge, but it's readily available.
It's free. You wouldn't charge them that?
Because again, it's almost like wooden dollars, I think. But at the moment, we all pay the same amount for the electricity because we all buy it through the same contract. And we've got an agreement at executive level at the moment that we will not charge each other. And we're not talking vast sums of money at the moment. Obviously, as that starts to grow, we will need to then start to recharge each other. But again, we've got that in place to do that through finance and everything. So it's not an issue for us.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I guess I know the answer to this one, but charging infrastructure, is there enough?
There isn't central belt and kind of like highly populated areas for us. We find that be fine. But again, once you go into the remote areas in Scotland, it's limited, and it tends to be slow chargers as well. So it's not really suitable for a kind of splash and dash type fleet. And also in remote areas, we tend to find it's tourists that use it, and they'll go for a hill walk. So it'll be on long charge periods. So they'll be away for 3-4 hours. Their car's plugged in, you can't take it off. So yes, it's quite frustrating. The more rural you go, the more difficult it becomes.
There shouldn't now be any DC charge points without contactless payment terminals on them.
Again,
It's not
there's
allowed.
some half kilowatt
Oh, right,
chargers.
okay, yeah. And that's where that little
Yeah.
part is.
Many DC
Anything will
chargers.
be, yeah.
Again, maybe I'm being a bit naive, but Visit Scotland, could they not be the delivery partner to sort of go to somewhere like that? And
I think they have in the past, and we supported them with a fund. They were delivering to exactly to provide charging infrastructure. It was more aimed, I think, at actual sort of bed and breakfast or whatever, places like that. So I don't know if it necessarily would be like publicly available of them. I'm not sure actually. I wasn't involved in running that. That was something they have done in the past, but at the moment I think it's just the Rural Island Fund is the kind of the only one that's available at the moment. So as I say, for those slower ones, which the public charge point regulations don't apply to, we are looking at including the cost of that, the contactless payment terminal. So hopefully that would help a bit.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of chargers, and I think it's people that probably necessarily are a little bit ignorant to it. They're not actually, they don't see the chargers, they're not looking for them to be able to think, oh yeah, I can actually do that journey. And I think it's a culture thing, and especially with like fleets, you've got to have that mindset and bringing those drivers in those early conversations and kind of discussing their views on EV and getting them in the vehicles. I think you'd have a huge kind of blocker. I don't know, how do you kind of think that the drivers have coped with the transition? Do you think they've got on board? Do you think they're quite resistant at first, but then as soon as they get in the vehicle and actually drive it?
Yeah, one of the
Like
things
it.
when it was 2018 when we sort of started seriously looking at this, and we put in our first sort of main EV charger. And at that time, what our executive said is we need to communicate and get on board all of the staff. So we've spent an awful lot of time with education. We do EV Awareness Day every time we open a new office.
Brilliant.
We've got QR codes, we've got tutorial videos for all of the vehicles we operate and also all the chargers. So if somebody jumps in a vehicle or jumps in a charger and never used it, they can read the QR code. It's a 2-minute tutorial video for the charger, and it's about an 8-minute tutorial video for the safety features. And
I think data is the key to the strategy. Like, you've got to use the data that you've got at the minute. We kind of help companies look at all of that and then ensure what we can do. It hits the strategy. But then after you get your charge points installed, use that data again, what you're taking from that charge as a phased approach. And because the charger back office acts like a big brother of charging, doesn't it? And you can get so much from that. And then that's that ever ongoing strategy. It's never going to be a ticky box done. It's always going to be kind of ever changing. And I think always phased approach, always. You can't rush in and do everything, but kind of start with the quick wins. What do they say? The low-hanging fruits. Kind of swap some of the old infrastructure out, ensure that you've got new infrastructure that you can manage, and look at all of that data. Get your fleet telematics on the go. So that we've got back office for charging infrastructure where we can bring telematics in as like an API link. And then if they're on supply with us energy, they can bring the energy in, and then you've got your charger. So it's like 3 views: energy, vehicles and chargers, and it actually pins down everything. It's like, this vehicle could be transitioned to this, and this is, and then it's like looking at how long people are idle at charging, and they'll ring up in the morning and say, oh, this vehicle hasn't been plugged in, or like, you haven't actually plugged it in. So I mean, it is drilling down, but it's getting those drivers on board, I suppose, early, and getting them engaged.
We get a lot of customers asking for telematics. So a few sort of third-party companies that we use and recommend. The dash cams is starting to be a big thing as well now. Trackers for any cars that are over £50,000. But yeah, so we've got sort of third-party companies we use, and we've actually taken some telematics ourselves and some of the staff that company cars have got the telematics in, so we can just keep on mind of what's going on out there and so forth. Certainly, I haven't had any use of telematics myself, to be honest. I know a friend that's got it in his work van, and he hates it.
I think we are going to find, though, going forward, there is a real lack of skill set in technicians, because we're not taking apprentices on, and it's something that's annoyed me for years. We don't take apprentices. We should, I think. Again, I'm quite Arnold Clark, but Arnold Clark's probably one of the best examples, because they take on literally hundreds of apprentices every year from various different companies.
Still find it difficult with technicians and stuff at times, but yeah, you're right, and the youngsters coming through and doing apprenticeships, and we're even finding that more like with the admin side and stuff as well. There's a lot more apprenticeships coming through and stuff for that side, not just in the mechanical side.
How are you kind of finding actually when you look to think, oh yeah, we've got this depot, we're going to put charging infrastructure in, and then you come down to like the power and the capacity? How are you managing that?
That's a nightmare.
The DNOs. The DNOs.
With difficult,
Engage as early as you can,
Yeah.
and include all your sites rather than going individually. That's the advice I
Oh,
would give.
okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. We work with a lot of DNOs, and I do find that not everybody's really technical, and it's really hard. And I think finding a partner that you can kind of engage with and do that work for you is really important. That kind of coming in, looking at the site capacity and things. But I do think you've got to try and get that relationship with the DNO, and kind of bring them in early days and talk about your plans with them, because it's like it's a land grab at the moment for, and you know the big private companies that are putting these DC rapid charging infrastructure in, they'll kind of grab the land, and they might not even have a connection or anything like that. I've seen installs and the chargers have never even been connected. It's just a bit crazy at the minute.
So software and technology, and I guess this is a lot of open data, who has access to the open data, how can we use open data to support each other, but also the opportunities with things like AI, etc. So anybody like to kick off with their views on what will help support what we're trying to move forward to, and what you think the gaps are and how we can sort of plug those gaps?
That I always say it's best to kind of, like I said, start with the data that we've got, to kind of help form strategy in terms of fleet transition, and then also charging infrastructure. So charging infrastructure can show you all of the kind of individual transactions, kilowatts taken, so energy and like your CO2 savings, quite nice. I don't know if it's 100% accurate as such. I don't know if you've got any views on that, but it's nice to report on, like for marketing purposes, PR, things like that.
And local authorities not actually also duty bound to report back on their carbon savings?
So a back office for the charging will help you kind of put a number, I suppose, on CO2 savings and consumption.
But what access do you guys need to be able to show that actually this isn't just for the climate, the environment, future generations, it's also about that spend to save now? I mean, is that...
There's something we do that I mentioned to you about just before our budget last year gets set in, this year gets set in the council. One of the parties questioned why we buy electric vehicles. And so I had to provide a bit of information back. And one of the things we demonstrated is, you know, the maintenance costs, diesel against electric, it's far less on the electric. Probably when you get a fault with electric, it does become expensive, but general maintenance wear and tear, it is far less under electric. We also have, we're supposed to be that with Falkirk Council here. Falkirk Council would set a target of 75% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2030 based on 1990 figures, and they reached it this year. One of the big factors in that's fleet. Again, we're talking about savings from fuel, from diesel. They don't associate a type of vehicle that the diesel's been burnt in, they just say the amount of diesel being burnt would produce this amount of CO2. We run our HGVs and HVO, which is hydrotreated vegetable oil, and the amount of that was burnt produced this amount. And they just say the difference is the same, which is a very good calculation doing that. But it benefits me because I made a 38% savings in emissions last year.
So leasing, obviously, versus buying, again, there's the balance there as well, isn't there, for fleets?
Pros and cons, yeah. Leasing world, that's really all I've been in, to be honest, but there is good savings out there, especially through the salary sacrifice schemes. That seems to be a lot of where the public sector go down, is through the salary sacrifice for us. And then obviously with the EV grants coming in, that's also helping, and it's reduced the costs on a monthly or annually basis.
Do you find though with like all these like new technologies and things, like I think people are trying to push ahead like hydrogen, and then with EV we've got like vehicle to grid technology and all of that, but I feel as though like it's brilliant and it's got its place, but we need to kind of solve the issue now, and we haven't even started with EV and normal charging really in some areas. Like I'm having the same conversations like 10 years ago is what I had with people, like let's make a bit of an action now rather than pushing ahead.
You need long-term guidance and support from government and successive governments, and unfortunately we don't get that.
People are still a wee bit reticent about actually going down the EV because they think, well, what's going to come next? And so there's also, I guess, that sort of challenge as well, because 2030, well, whether you use 2030, 2035, 2050, whatever, they're not that far away. And so, you know, there's got to be, as you say, there's got to be leadership from a policy point of view. Are the people seeing changes coming through, or is it just business as normal?
Because it's that total cost of ownership thing. Before it was like, right, well, we can save carbon and we can save money. But if you are relying on the public charging network, it is more expensive. I think the tipping point, correct me if I'm wrong, is 55 pence per kilowatt hour. Anything above that, it's more expensive than diesel, you know, which most of the rapid and ultra rapid chargers are, apart from Arnold Clark, which charges a great amount. So yeah, there is pushback from chief financial officers to go, hang on a minute, you know, if they don't have the buy-in and they're just looking at the pounds and pence, then it does become really difficult to justify an electrification strategy.
Yeah, I think the government's put so much money and funding into, like, you know, the on-street charging funds. We've got that Levi fund and things like that. But what are they actually providing for kind of fleets and private fleets, emergency services? How are they helping transition? I know they've released a little bit of funding this year, but it's like the funding and chargers have to be in the ground by 31st of March next year, and how is that sustainable? Like how is that giving anybody a chance to transition?
I'm finding a lot of customers, Mark, you might find it with the council stuff, but choosers that were allowed to get their cars to go and do their jobs is now changed, and it's pool cars. And you're finding that if you're in a department of 6, you may have 2 pool cars sitting outside, and if you've got to go and do your business, you're using that. But if it's through the NHS, you're obviously getting your tax relief on that because it's used as business use only, so you're not having to pay the road tax on it. Get your exemption on there. So we're finding a lot of the NHSs are going down that route.
Actually really refreshing to hear people at various different stages of the journey, and you know, you guys are still here, still wanting to do it, but until it works, you know, as I say, if you get it wrong, then that just sets you back and makes your drivers miserable. So it's been really great to hear everybody's perspectives, and obviously hear about Charge Place Scotland. You know, I think it's going to have a massive impact for us with our drivers, you know, up and down the Highlands and in Murray and Aberdeenshire.
You know, it's interesting to see which everyone's challenges are and what they face. You know, West Coast, and there's no reception and infrastructure there, but yeah, in the city, Dundee doing really well. You know, for me on Clark is we're seeing a huge increase in the electric vehicles, but what we're finding is that sometimes the supply isn't as good as it should be. But there's a lot of the Chinese market coming in, and availability and stuff is getting a lot better. Range anxieties, some of the batteries that are coming out now over 300-400 miles. We'll hopefully see quicker charging available. But it's good to actually like mix with different sectors and actually see what's happening out there.
I think, like, just as a bit of a reflection, when I kind of first started off in this job 10 years ago now, it was like, my kind of view was like, well, all of these fleets will have to change their culture, they'll have to change operations to transition to electric, but that's not always the case, and I noticed that can't always be done. Some, yes, but like obviously with you, Richard, that isn't a possibility. Similar to kind of some of your rapid response vehicles and that kind of thing. I mean, I think we've got to have to accept at this moment in time that not all vehicles are going to be transitioned to electric. Pick and choose what we can do, like kind of those quick wins, and just kind of, I suppose, start like you've trialled them. That is a good start to kind of get going, and I think it's really good that everyone's just really sitting here and still continuing the conversation, even though we're seeing these challenges. We're still discussing it and looking for ways to progress in the future. So we'll still continue to do that, never give up.